Welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening news. Tonight we celebrate with a special advocacy takeover of the show. Everyone on the panel tonight works within the nonprofit and LGBTQ+ advocacy field and has advanced our community in many ways. So it's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m., Monday, January 31st, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ+ experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ+ news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Orlando Gonzales. Let's welcome anchor Victor Gimenez. His passion and love of classic films drove him to the Miami Gay and Lesbian Film Festival's screening committee in 2011. With some behind-scenes experience under his belt, he then became the executive director of what is now the Outshine LGBTQ+ Film Festival. He recently left Outshine here in South Florida and is now the executive director of the Tampa Bay International Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. Welcome, my good friend, Victor.
Thank you, Orlando. Now let's welcome Cindy Brown. She's an icon of the LGBTQ+ community. She was an early organizer of Miami AIDS Walk, the White Party for Care Resource, and other major events. She has served as the executive director of the Miami-Dade Gay and Lesbian Chamber Foundation and the LGBTQ Visitor Center. She is the founding executive director of Miami Beach Pride and currently serves as a program manager for Jewish Community Services LGBTQ Lambda Living program for LGBT seniors. Good evening, Cindy.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Victor. Now let's welcome Maxx Fenning from PRISM. At 17, Maxx founded this amazing nonprofit organization that works to expand access to LGBTQ+ inclusive education and sexual health resources for LGBTQ+ youth in South Florida. Now at 19, Maxx is a senior at the University of Florida and serves as PRISM's president. Good evening, Maxx.
Thank you, Cindy. Let's welcome anchor Jana Jaffe, a former counseling director with Broward County Schools for 24 years. She has her master's and PhD in counseling and is a board-certified sex therapist. Dr. Jaffe had a private practice for 10 years prior to her position at Broward House, one of South Florida's most important LGBTQ+ health and service nonprofits, specializing in HIV and mental health care as community relations manager. Good evening, Jana.
Thank you, Maxx. Hi, everybody. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Monday, January 31st.
Let's queer up the USA. Activists weigh in as Bill Maher reads the left. What do you think? This weekend on the New Rules segment of the Real-Time show, Bill Maher discusses how the left has moved into a position where their platform is being pushed forward by many in the media. Instead of helping promote the acceptance, that's the goal. It seems to be pushing the moderate Democrats further to the center and driving the right completely insane. When is an issue taken way too far? While many don't accept the gender binary, does the government have the right to legally mandate gender-neutral toy aisles at stores like Walmart? And when does it go from protecting the rights and move into policing of thoughts?
Okay, I do have a fair bit to say about this. So this starts off messy, right? It goes, he transitions into this transphobic tirade about pregnant man emojis. And what I need people like Bill Maher to understand is smoking pot does not automatically make you cool if you're also transphobic. Just look at Joe Rogan. The two cancel each other out. So of course he's being praised by Fox News, right? He sounds like Tucker Carlson. He even brought Ben Shapiro on his show. You know, the guy who only talks in hypotheticals, and the closest he's ever come to an actual religious thought is playing devil's advocate for the sake of argument. I would like to propose my own piece of loony liberal legislation. Can we ban cishet men from starting any new podcasts or talk shows?
I support that.
Just for the rest of the year, because I swear we do not need another one.
Yeah.
Max, I think you rounded off pretty good amount of commentary on that one, and you've got a lot of support from the group. Anyone else?
Yeah.
All right, Victor.
Queer Up the USA. Polk County, Florida, using gay dating apps to make drug arrests. Watch this.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. I've called you together to speak about an event that is different. It's different than any kind of arrest that we've ever made with our narcotics team. And our narcotics team is simply the very best in the business. And it all started with a Crime Stoppers tip. You know, I encourage people to use Crime Stoppers. You can make money, and we can follow up leads, and no one ever knows who you are, to include us. We don't know who you are, and that's what happened in this particular event. So we received a Crime Stoppers tip that, hey, they're really selling drugs on an app called Grindr, and Scruff, and Tammy. So our detectives last July started that investigation, and voila, we discovered exactly what we were told, that they were selling dope, a lot of street dope on these dating apps. So at the end of the day, as we looked, it was a shock to us that they were openly advertising. Can you believe this? They were openly advertising, they were selling dope on dating apps.
Polk County, Florida authorities have used LGBTQ plus dating apps in a crackdown on drugs, targeting the app's users who sold them. As part of the 6-month undercover operation police have called Swipe Left, the Polk County Sheriff's Office said it had made 60 arrests. The term swipe left likely has to do with the association of swiping on mainstream apps like Tinder. Swiping right and left is not as much of an aspect of Grindr or Scruff. In a press conference Thursday, police said the investigation began in July 2021 after the Sheriff's Office was given a tip about users selling drugs on Grindr. Police then targeted similar apps, Scruff and Tammy, apps used by the LGBTQ plus community, typically focusing on men who have sex with men. On the board of arrest, some women were listed. Judd said it was a shock that the presence of drugs was fairly open. Detectives found the use of terms like Tina and party, as well as things like the cake emoji and the ice cream cone emoji, as used to attract others who might be interested in drugs. Investigators bought 280 grams of methamphetamines, a street value of approximately $14,000, and 130 pills of ecstasies, among other drugs.
Wow. Well, the first thing I'll say about this is you're selling drugs on a dating app. You're an idiot. And somebody turned the dime in on you. So I have very little sympathy for the folks that got arrested.
I so agree. It's illegal.
Yeah.
It's illegal, so therefore don't post it, and don't think that the other members of the LGBTQ community are going to come to your defense because of this. It's illegal. Don't do it.
So I will not confirm or deny how old I was when I first downloaded Grindr. But what's so dangerous about this is I can assure you that I did not know what capital T meant when I was the age that I was.
You know, working in the community as I have, especially with our gay men, I've heard so many stories of similar to this, and it is. They've been preying on these apps, and I appreciate that somebody's turned them in. People are going after them, and let's put an end to this. Our community is dying because of drugs.
Absolutely, definitely. I think that the methamphetamine crisis is out of control, and it's time for us to step up as a community and embrace the help from others who are going to combat this epidemic.
Right.
Cindy.
Now let's queer up the world. A new report shows LGBTQ plus Afghans gang raped, attacked, and hunted. LGBTQ plus Afghans are facing an increasingly desperate situation since the Taliban takeover in August 2021, according to a report by Human Rights Watch and Outright Action International. The 43-page report entitled, "Even If You Go to the Skies, We'll Find You," features interviews from 60 LGBTQ plus Afghans conducted from October to December of 2021, and details of horrific instances of threats, violence, and sexual assault. Many interviewees described the fear of getting outed to the Taliban by family, neighbors, or ex-partners. Several LGBT plus people still living in Afghanistan said that even if they managed to avoid direct violence, they are now unable to go and earn a living or go out to purchase essentials.
I want to just say kudos to the HRC, and as well as to the Afghans that actually, put their lives in danger to speak up. And the sad truth, this is not something that's just located just in Afghanistan. It's quite frankly, any country that has a strong prejudice against LGBT community, and unfortunately, there's just a lot of that in the Middle East, and not just limited there too.
You know what I'd like to really put into perspective, just to really put my age into perspective, this is the first period of my life that the U.S. has not been at war with Afghanistan. So while a lot of Americans were getting tired of this war going on for about 20 years, it's really all I've ever known. And what's really terrifying is just how quickly the Taliban was able to take over Afghanistan, and what that means for LGBTQ plus Afghans now.
Absolutely, and women, right? I think women have also reported an incredible amount of rollback in terms of their own dignity and human rights.
Right, and in terms of the people trying to escape the country, if you're a transgender person, you don't even have a passport with a name that matches your identity. So, I think that I wish there was a way that there was some kind of underground railroad that, we could get them out. It's just heartbreaking.
Absolutely, a preservation of democracy. Let's now turn to Max.
Next, let's queer up gay culture. February 1st, history is made for LGBTQ on television with LGBTQ students, Our Future. Tomorrow, the Happening Out television network makes history in several exciting ways. It is the network's official launch on Roku, Apple TV, Google TV, and Amazon Fire TV. We also look to the future as we broadcast directly from a special rally at the Pride Center in Wilton Manors as politicians and activists come together to speak out against the newly proposed Don't Say Gay in Schools bill here in Florida. For this special broadcast, our anchor panel will be made up of the specialists most affected by this bill, LGBTQ plus students, such as myself. Make sure to tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. for this one-of-a-kind broadcast.
So plain and simple, this bill, which is censorship, is the practice of communism. The Republican legislators that have proposed this legislation are practicing communism.
Right. And, we're here. Just because you can't say the name doesn't mean we're going to disappear. And it's a huge disservice to our children, because they'll get out in the world someday, and it's actually child abuse not to prepare them for everything that they can encounter in the world. It just makes me sick, and this is just the beginning.
Right. Broward County Schools has always been, relatively upfront and as far as what they've done for our LGBTQ plus students. With transgender bathrooms starting a while ago, and this I have faith that Broward County Schools will continue to do what they do and not necessarily follow what that the government up there in Tallahassee wants us to do.
Right, which we have seen Broward County schools do in the past. We've seen Palm Beach County, we've seen Miami-Dade County with things like the mask mandates and other sort of legislation from our dearest Ron DeSantis. But I always say that it's very true, and much in line with what Cindy said. Just pretending that something isn't there does not make it go away. We talk about this when we're talking about sexual health education. Pretending that STIs are not a thing does not mean that STIs will disappear. You have to be able to prepare people for the real world and real life. Right.
So part of the reality here is we are incredibly outnumbered in Tallahassee. So the likelihood of this passing is very likely. It will happen probably, but it's a time for leadership. And as Max was just saying, some of our public school leaders have really stepped out and really gone against the grain, no matter what Tallahassee says. So, Jana.
Queer up the world. LGBTQ plus Ukrainians ready to fight for freedom if Russia invades. Ukraine and Russia have been at war with each other since 2014, but there are fears that conflict could spill over after Russia deploys tens of thousands of troops to its border with Ukraine in recent days. Since then, the United States has put 8,500 of its own troops on alert to send to Ukraine if the war worsens. And NATO announced that it was sending ships and fighter jets to Eastern Europe in preparation for potential conflict. A Russian attack or potential invasion would spell disaster for Ukraine's LGBTQ plus community. Queer activists are worried about what could happen if the war escalates and if Russia was to ultimately seize additional Ukrainian territories. They fear that progress on LGBTQ plus rights would grind to a halt, and that in the event of a Russian invasion, they could see their freedoms restricted and rolled back.
Yeah, sure that would happen.
Not just that. I think we should just be scared if Russia just invades in general.
Right.
I mean, not just for LGBTQ rights, but it would cause just major problems in the area, plus Europe in general, and it would just not be good for anybody at all, and more than just the LGBTQ plus community, to be completely frank.
Right.
Since the fall of the Soviet Union, it's incredible that the Ukraine has been able to protect itself as an island within that region of the world. And so watching this come apart in front of our eyes, it's very disheartening and it's very sad. And I just hope that we can be there to help protect Ukraine as much as possible.
Ukrainian soldiers have done so much within the last year with coming out and really saying who they are while
Fighting.
Yeah. Exactly. And I just hope that something like this just doesn't, set that back and have them have to be quiet again.
Let's go to Cindy.
Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ plus religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
I'm Kiara Johnson, the Executive Director of the National LGBTQ Task Force. And as one of the most important civil rights organizations, I know the value of the support that comes from all corners of our community. That's why Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We finished tonight's queer news headlines with what we call LGBTQ flash news. LGBTQ flash news. Advocacy began with Marsha P. Johnson and Stonewall with her powerful quotes. No quote encapsulates Martha P. Johnson more than, quote, pay it no mind, end quote. After all, that's what she said her middle initial stood for. And that fearless attitude exemplifies how the Black transgender activist lived her life, leading the charge for LGBTQ+ rights every step of the way, and helping instigate the Stonewall Inn uprising that sparked the gay pride movement. But life didn't start out fearlessly for Johnson. As the fifth of 7 children of a General Motors assembly line worker and a housekeeper, Johnson was about 5 years old when she began wearing dresses, but was often harassed by other children. Here are some quotes from Johnson that capture her spirit and endless passion for LGBTQ+ rights. On who she was, she said, quote, "I was no one, nobody from Nowheresville until I became a drag queen. That's what made me in New York, that's what made me in New Jersey, and that's what made me in the whole world." On equality, she said, quote, "How many years has it taken people to realize that we are all brothers and sisters and human beings in human race?" On her identity, quote, "I'd like to see the gay revolution get started. If a transvestite doesn't say I'm gay and I'm proud and I'm a transvestite, then nobody else is going to hop up here and say I'm gay and I'm proud and I'm a transvestite for them." Marsha had many, many other powerful quotes, and we encourage all of our viewers to look into them.
I am just thrilled that, in the last decade or so, she has gotten the recognition that she deserves for her participation in Stonewall.
The quote that got my attention was the one about that we're all, part of the same human race. But we all believe that here in the compounds in this broadcast today. But the sad truth is, there's many people that still don't believe that, and we still got a long way to go before that, becomes a reality.
Her bravery back then, at a time, it was just really incredible, and it's wonderful that we're able to recognize that and really put it out there.
We've been saying this increasingly as the years go by, but I think especially as Black History Month is starting tomorrow, it is so important that we recognize the contributions that Black trans women like Marsha B. Johnson have made and continue to make to this day for our community, and all those rights that we take for granted in 2022.
It's been more than 50 years since the Stonewall uprising, and still those quotes ring true, they ring relevant, and so it just proves that while we've gained so much, we still have so much to do. Victor.
LGBTQ+ flash news. Doritos faces boycott over Israeli ad with gay couples. Doritos is facing boycott calls from some conservative religious Israeli Jews after the chip manufacturer released an advertisement featuring gay and lesbian couples. The ad was posted last week on Doritos' Hebrew language social media accounts ahead of Family Day, or Yom HaMishpacha, which will be marked this Tuesday. This holiday began in Israel as Mother's Day, but was later expanded to honor the contribution of all parents in raising a family. The ad begins by showing members of Israeli families. As a narrator says, family is not something one chooses. The narrator says in the commercial, as different families are shown, quote, "But there are some families that do choose to be families. There are families created by the complex reality. There are families that travel to the other side of the world on the path to becoming a family." End quote. The commercial shows families that include 2 women with children, a gay couple with a baby, and a single father. The commercial ends saying, "There are many families, and they are all special. And even if it takes courage to dare in all choices, all families deserve to be families." Well, as a married gay man with a family of 2 kids, I appreciate Doritos on this. And, it starts with commercials like this where gay families become normalized and people see it and people get used to it. And thank you for Doritos for starting that.
Israel's always ahead of the time, and our religious folks there they'll get over it. The fact that Mother's Day became Yom HaMishpacha, the Day of the Family, is, again, it just shows what Israel does. The religious folk, the ultra Orthodox and Hasidic, they'll get with it.
Yeah, I think it's sorry. I think it's crazy that this boycott and it's really just like the Gillette, that one Gillette ad all over again, and the Gillette controversy all over again. I think it's a beautiful video. I think it's a beautiful message, and shame on anyone who thinks that they're facing religious discrimination because of a Doritos ad. You're ridiculous.
Absolutely, and I love the normalization that our families are families, and therefore it's definitely a family value is one that is pretty universal and that people can relate to, and so we're very much a part of that. Cindy?
I am so happy that Doritos is pushing the envelope in Israel. And here's a camping hack if you don't already know it. Doritos is a great fire starter. So not only bring your Doritos camping to eat, but bring them to help start your fire. LGBTQ plus flash news. Poll finds trans workers face significant wage gap. Transgender and gender non-conforming people are among the lowest paid LGBTQ plus people working full-time in the United States, according to a snapshot poll by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation and a California-based market research firm. Queer News Tonight reported last week on this poll and how cisgendered gay men make 90 cents on the dollar compared to straight counterparts. And the poll data shows that our transgender siblings are making as low as 60 cents on the dollar. Trans people experience widespread unemployment and poverty at higher rates compared to the rest of the U.S. population. Even if a trans person does get a job outside of the underground economy, discrimination can still take its toll and stunt economic advancement, says Josie Caballero, survey project manager of the U.S. Transgender Survey. Caballero said, quote, "If you're just trying to avoid discrimination, you're not asking for promotions. You're not trying to seek quality of life. You're just trying to survive and keep your head down." You know, this is just really disturbing. There have been wage differences for so many, and it's a constant struggle. It really is a constant struggle.
Yeah, I think Caballero's comment is, or last quote is correct. I mean, you're just so scared to have your job, you're not going to raise your voice to fight for yourself and more income for yourself. And it's just a tough spot.
Yeah, and that's what I just kept going on for me is that, yeah, that if you're just trying to survive, your voice isn't going to be heard, and it's sad for them, and it's sad for all of us. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, what we've seen in recent years is there have been some polls that show that gay and bisexual men and women actually oftentimes actually do earn more money than their straight counterparts. And what's unfortunate is seeing, with this poll, the way that trans people are not experiencing that same reality, and it's just another example of how excluded trans people often are from the LGBTQ community as a whole.
You know, in my career trajectory, I have had many conversations in the decision-making circles around salaries, around pay. And it is unbelievable the excuses and the narratives that are used to justify the differences. And plain and simple, any disparity in pay is discrimination. Right. And I think that what gets forgotten in the center of all those conversations is that while that conversation is taking place, is that people are out loud practicing discrimination, and they're trying to say, well, this person is, the head of a family of, 5, and they just sort of continue to focus on a very heteronormative story that really tries to empower that conversation, and it is discrimination, plain and simple, and it's illegal in the United States. Max.
LGBTQ plus flash news. Netflix responds to HRC removal from annual corporate equality index. On the 27th of January, the HRC released their inclusive report that rates the best places to work for LGBTQ plus people. After being on the list for 5 years, the popular streaming service was notably absent from the latest report. The decision was made due to Netflix's handling of Dave Chappelle's transphobic comedy special, The Closer. Shortly after the report was announced, a spokesperson from Netflix released a statement respectfully disagreeing with the findings, saying, quote, "While we have more work to do, we've made real strides on inclusion, including for our LGBTQ plus colleagues. For example, we offer comprehensive transgender and non-binary inclusive care in our U.S. health plans, as well as adoption, surrogacy, and parental leave for same-sex couples. And we've also worked hard to increase representation on screen." Netflix is the only major entertainment company to have commissioned and published independent research into diversity in our content so that we can better measure our progress, end quote. Jay Brown, the HRC's Vice President of Programs, Training, and Research, revealed that Netflix's score was initially going to be deducted by 25 points, but after further deliberation, they decided suspension was more appropriate. You know, I think that what's unfortunate is that Netflix actually has consistently gotten a perfect score for the past several years now. And what's really unfortunate, I guess, is that they don't really recognize that this is what happens when you provide a platform for a self-proclaimed TERF. It's the consequences of your own actions, frankly.
I felt like they were just defending rather than just saying, I'm sorry, we'll do better. Mm-hmm. We'll try and get it again. And that's the way it should be.
Most definitely. I appreciate Netflix for all they've done, especially entertainment and representation. But as like Max said, you make a mistake, and Jana said also, say you're sorry, move forward, take the consequences forward, and be there next year.
I feel that Netflix didn't do enough when the closer came out, and I agree with HRC's decision.
I struggle with HRC's decision. I realize that what Netflix did was horrific. And I do believe that it was a reduction of points, a reduction in their previous standing. So my questions are, is the suspension permanent? Is there a moment of redemption? Is there a moment when they can sort of come back onto the scoreboard? It's a big deal, right? To be totally removed as if you've done nothing. And so I struggle with where they landed in terms of totally removing them. I don't know if it's permanent or not, but we'll look into it as it proceeds. Jana?
Point. LGBTQ plus flash news. It's the happiest place on gay earth as Disney ranked one of the most equal workplaces to work in America. The Walt Disney Company recently announced that the Human Rights Campaign awarded the Walt Disney Company a perfect score on its Corporate Equality Index for the 16th year in a row. Disney gained this perfect score for its LGBTQ plus friendly policies and inclusive benefits. With this consistent score, Disney has been ranked one of the best workplaces for LGBTQ plus equality by the Human Rights Campaign. Even as the Human Rights Campaign continues to raise its requirements for a perfect score, Disney has continued to keep up and make progress.
I think I'm absolutely stoked about this. First and foremost, in a very stark contrast to the story that we just heard. I'm so excited that Disney is finally recognizing that queer representation and family-friendly content are not mutually exclusive. Honestly, I couldn't be happier.
I almost said just immediately that was just a whole different. So it's kind of nice to have that after the last. So that's it.
I'm going to flip it a little bit here. I'm kind of sometimes annoyed with Disney where they always kind of tease, oh, there's going to be the gay character in this movie or this, that, the other thing, and it's always like a background kiss. I think they got a long way to go in terms of on the flip side, I think Netflix has done a better job showing gay life on their entertainment side of it as opposed to Disney. But again, this is an employment type of scenario. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, well, Disney, the gayest place on earth? Absolutely.
Well, it is definitely a contrast, right, to look at the Netflix story and then the Disney story side by side and kind of compare them. One of the things that I'll say is that oftentimes people complain when the goalpost is moved because you're shooting for a target. But in this situation for Disney, and kudos to them, when the goalpost is moved, they still reach for it and they still aim it and they get it, right? And so they continue to make improvements in their employment and in their culture as an employer, and really are pushing the envelope in terms of what they can do for our community as employers.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you're a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Happening Out television network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Orlando Gonzales, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Cindy Brown, Victor Gimenez, Maxx Fenning, and Dr. Jana Jaffe, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the